Hey guys, and welcome back to another episode in the Path to the Match series. Today I'm going to be talking about a super exciting topic, and that is the top 8 most commonly asked interview questions in all specialties. And the reason I find this topic so exciting is because that means if you're watching this video, you're probably getting ready to apply for the match, and you're probably getting ready to prepare for interviews for residency so that you can secure your dream job of becoming a physician. Traditionally speaking, most medical students go right from high school to college to medical school, and they never actually experience a job interview. So this can be a very stressful time for them. For those of you who are fortunate enough to have some experience with job interviews, for example, during a gap year, this interview season is going to be a little bit different because chances are, if you're watching this video, that job that you interviewed for in the past was not your dream job, but becoming a doctor is your dream job. So this one is a little bit more special. So I want everyone to experience that same incredible feeling that I did on match day. So I'm going to do my very best to prepare you guys with these top 8 most commonly asked interview questions so that you are kind of aware of the questions that are going to be coming your way on interview day. And before I start, I just want to mention that a lot of you are probably wondering, well, how applicable is this video going to be for me, who is applying as a 2021 applicant, and my interviews are going to be virtual? And the answer is that's not going to change. The questions they ask are more than likely going to be largely the same because they're still going to be trying to assess the same things they do in the typical traditional in-person interviews that they normally conduct. And that is conflict resolution, ability to be a team player, how teachable are you, what kind of personality do you have and do you fit into their program, are they going to be able to fulfill your long-term goals? All of these things, they're going to be trying to assess whether it is virtual or in person. So with the exception of 1 or 2 questions I'll add at the end, the interview questions you're going to be asked are going to be largely the same. And so without further ado, your number 8 most commonly asked interview question is, can you please tell me about this volunteer experience on your application? One of 2 things are more than likely to happen. Either A, they're going to pick a volunteer experience from your application and ask you to elaborate on it, or B, they are going to ask you to pick a volunteer experience from your application and then elaborate on it. Basically, they just want to see that you are passionate about what you did, that you learned something that's going to contribute to your development in medicine, and just learn more about whatever the volunteer opportunity that you had on your application was. In terms of preparing to answer this question, basically if they pick a volunteer experience for you, you just have to elaborate on it. Talk about it a little bit, talk about the skills you developed from that experience, talk about how it's going to make you a better physician, and just try to convey your passion from whatever that volunteer experience that you chose to do was. If they ask you to choose a volunteer experience and elaborate on it, my biggest suggestion is to pick one that you plan to always talk about whenever you're asked this question. Whatever one that you either did the longest, or you feel the most passionate about, or you feel connects your long-term goals with the question, you can feel free to talk about that one. But I recommend, just to kind of prevent stress and discombobulation in your head on interview day when you're all stressed, just have one that you're always going to go to and you're always going to talk about. Number 7, what are you looking for in a program? This is important to remember, that the match is a 2-way street. Obviously, you're looking for a position, but also remember that programs are looking to fill their spots too, because they don't want to go through the SOAP process either. So they want people who are interested in their program and feel like their values and their goals align with their program's values and goals. For example, if you interview at a small community hospital that doesn't typically tend to conduct a lot of research because they're much more focused on patient care and community outreach, and you go in talking about how your long-term goals include research and how you really don't want to do anything with your career other than research, even if you're a very well-rounded, excellent applicant, the chance of you matching there is still going to be pretty low. They're not going to rank you very high because your goals don't really align with theirs. The match matches people based off of commonalities. That's how it works. You're supposed to wind up somewhere where you're happy, and programs are supposed to wind up happy with their residents because they make a good fit for their program. Number 6, tell me about a time where you dealt with conflict. Tell me about a difficult patient encounter you had. Tell me about a time where you disagreed with an attending and or colleague. All of these questions are essentially getting at the same thing, and that is your conflict resolution skills. Conflict resolution is a huge part of becoming a physician because People practice different ways. People have different opinions on things, and that's okay. That's why it's called practicing medicine. It's an art. Everyone kind of does it a little bit differently. Again, the best advice I have for preparing for this interview question is to pick one specific story and share that story every time you're asked this question. Again, this will prevent you from being flustered and stressed out trying to think of a story on interview day. If you think of one in advance, just share this one every single time. Share the story, share the outcomes, share what you learned from it, and you should be okay. Number 5, why this specific program? Every single year, program directors go through thousands of applications, and they finally narrow it down to people they want to interview. At this point, you have been selected for the interview, and now they want to know why you specifically want to come there because they still have to rank applicants. Like I said, the match is a two-way street. They want to rank applicants who actually want to be there. I think this is a specific problem for IMGs because IMGs tend to apply absolutely everywhere to help us get the best chance we possibly can of getting interviews. However, programs want to know that you actually want to come there. What you want to do is go on their website the night before, write down some specifics about their program that you find interesting. Websites of the programs are usually very informative. You can also write down some things that they have that might contribute to your long-term goals. Those are really great things to mention as well. You can mention location. However, I would never use this as the primary reason. I would use specifics about the actual program as the primary reason and then add location in as like a second or third factor. Number 4, tell me about this specific hobby. Tell me about your hobbies. Tell me something about yourself that is not on your application. All of these questions are getting at the same thing. They want to know about you as a person and they want to know what you do to decompress. Residency is notoriously known for having a high burnout rate, and programs, believe it or not, are becoming more focused on wellness. They want to know that their residents are going to be healthy, and they want to know that you have outlets and ways to cope with the stresses that come along with residency. So whatever your hobbies are, whatever excites you, whatever you're passionate about, this is what you should talk about here. You can go on and on about whatever you want. It honestly doesn't matter. They just want to know that you have some type of outlet to get rid of your stresses in. Number 3, what are your subspecialty/fellowship interests? What are your long-term career goals? Where do you see yourself in 5 years? All of these questions are essentially getting at the same thing, and that is, what the heck do you want to do with your life? And honestly, this is a pretty straightforward question, so just jot down whatever you want to do with your life, whatever you think you want to do with your life. Don't be afraid to say that. In addition, keep in mind that this is a really great place for follow-up questions to be asked. For example, if you're interested in doing a GI fellowship, be prepared to simultaneously prepare an answer to why you want to do GI, because they're probably going to be interested in knowing that as well. If you don't know what you want to do with your life, or if you're even interested in fellowship, don't be afraid to say that. If you're interested in Pulm Crit and you're interested in cardiology and you're interested in hospitalist medicine and you don't know which one you want to do yet, that's okay. You're not expected to know. That's what residency is for. You will figure it out. People know that. It's okay to say that. You're not expected to have one specific career goal in mind. That being said, if you do have a specific career goal in mind, that's excellent. Either way, don't be afraid to tell them and share with them what your long-term goals are. And if your long-term career goals are a little fuzzy yet, don't be afraid to share that either. The number 2 most commonly asked interview question is, why this specific specialty? Why internal medicine? Why pediatrics? Why do you want to be a surgeon? Everyone has their own why. I have my own why. You have your own why. I don't know what your why is. If you don't know what your why is either, do some soul searching and please find out, because this is going to be asked on probably every single one of your interviews. Make sure that you practice this a couple times, because you want to be able to convey your passion for this specific specialty through this question, and you also want to be able to convey your interest to the person who's interviewing you. If you're applying for a secondary specialty, make sure that you sound just as passionate and just as convincing that you're interested in your secondary specialty as if it were your primary specialty. Because honestly, if you can't do this, there's no point in going on the interview. If you can't convince someone that you're interested in this, you shouldn't even bother applying for a secondary specialty anyways, because you're not going to be ranked. So make sure that if you are applying for a secondary specialty, you are able to be just as convincing and just as passionate in the interview about that secondary specialty as if it were your primary specialty. And drum roll, most commonly asked interview question on every interview in every single specialty is not even a question, it's a statement. And that is, tell me about yourself, which is so frustrating because it is so vague. The best part is this gives you some freedom to express who you feel like you are as a person instead of someone just reading about you on the application. They want to be able to see that you are just as exciting in real life as on paper, or perhaps even more exciting in real life than you are on paper. I personally started off with where I was from and then where I went to college because both of these tied together to give the program director or the person interviewing me an idea of why I'm specifically interested in the patient population I'm interested in. And why my long-term goals are what they are, because these two patient population mixtures really tie in to what I want to do in the future. So for me, that was really important. I also used to talk about running because running has taught me a lot of life lessons. And then I also used to talk about everything that I failed in. So I used to talk about how I did poorly on the MCAT twice, completely bombed it, went to SGU and worked my absolute tail off to get good grades, to get good step scores, to get good letters of recommendation and all that, because I'm passionate about being a doctor. I wasn't passionate about being a biology major, and I definitely wasn't passionate about any questions that they ask you on the MCAT. So between my failures and the life lessons I learned from running, I also felt that this ties in really well together to give them a sense of who I am as a person. And I think that those are my favorite qualities about myself that I like to share with people as well. Again, I really don't think there's a right or wrong way to answer this question. All they really want to know is something about you that they can take in a different direction. They know that you're nervous and that you're freaking out about the interview, and they want to make you feel more comfortable. And by letting you talk freely about yourself and allowing them to take one of your interests that you say in that statement in a different direction. For example, if you like shopping, they can ask follow-up questions on shopping. What do you like shopping for? Where do you like shopping? Things like that. It allows you to be more comfortable because you don't feel like you're being drilled with interview questions, because the interview is going to be much more conversational. The other thing is they want to get to know more about you as a person. They have your transcripts in front of them. They have your step 1, your step 2 scores in front of them. They know what your academics are like. They want to know more about who you are and see if you're going to make a good fit for the program. So this last little segment, I'm going to talk about some questions that you may encounter this year specifically because of the pandemic. I think a lot of programs are well aware that most medical students were displaced from their rotations at some point. So they're going to probably inquire about either what you did with your time off or what your education was like when you were displaced from the hospital. So in terms of how did COVID-19 affect your education, you can sort of elaborate on what the policies and procedures were from either your school or your hospital in terms of learning online. You can talk about your online curriculum and how you learn that way. You can even discuss the challenges or the pros and the cons that you kind of saw transitioning from the hospital setting to the online curriculum for core clerkships. You can also talk about how you navigated all of these last minute decisions by hospitals, by your school, because everyone was sort of hanging on by a thread, and everything was a very last minute decision. So you just kind of had to wait for the very next email to kind of tell you what to do. So this was obviously very frustrating for a lot of people, but this is something that you can share as well. The other thing is, what did you do during your time off? Like I said, most medical students were displaced from the hospital for some period of time. So perhaps you got involved in a research project, or perhaps you found a volunteer experience at a hospital during the pandemic. This is a great time to share that. If you were in a state where the restrictions were very strict and you weren't able to find any volunteer work or anything like that, you can talk about what you learned, either about yourself, a new skill you built. They're going to be interested in this too. They just probably want to know what you did with your time. I think if they ask any specific questions, more than likely it will be one of these two things. And lastly, there's a few resources that you can use to help you prepare for interview season. If you go on the AAMC website, they have specific resources for this year's applicants on virtual interviews. I recommend checking out both the documents for the applicants on how to prepare for interview season, and also the documents on how program directors will be preparing for interview season as well, so that you know what to expect. In addition, The most commonly asked interview questions for internal medicine are listed on the ACP, American College of Physicians website. If you just Google ACP, most commonly asked interview questions, you can take a look at these. And I know the AAFP, American Academy of Family Physicians, has this on their website as well. So if you're applying for internal medicine or you're applying for family medicine, these are two really great resources you can use. I'm not sure if any other subspecialties have them listed, but I would assume that they have some type of list. So definitely be sure to check them out. And as always, don't forget to like, don't forget to subscribe, and don't forget to follow me on Instagram.